Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you are in the world. And welcome to GRS F1. We are back today with round 5 at the Zandvoort circuit in the Netherlands. Pretty new to the F1 calendar. Was raced earlier on in F1's history in the 70s and 80s. Was reintroduced mostly because of course, Max Verstappen and the Dutch interest in Formula 1 growing. We had this race last season as well, and it was a pretty impressive one in terms of the side-by-side action. Quite a tricky technical circuit here, as we're just about 7 minutes into qualifying already. As George is just going to do a competitive lap, I think, as he's gone over the line with a 1:39. Currently leading the way is the Alpine of... Oh dear, George. George goes for a little spin on the exit of Tarzan there at turn 1. So that will be not a good lap for that Ferrari. So let's jump on board with his teammate as we just go through everything that has happened so far in the first 7 or so minutes of qualifying. So currently leading the way with a 1 minute 10.7 is the Alpine of Cameron Don, recently promoted from F2, showing that he definitely had the pace to be here in F1. Followed by the Mercedes of Quinton Hescher, and then the McLaren of Luke Mills jumping up to P3. Those two in the 10.8s, as Iron does a 10.5. That's a pretty mega lap from Iron already to start us off. That's a very, very strong banker, as Martin Ivanov, Iron's teammate from last season, now in the Alfa Romeo, goes just a thousandth off Quentin. So that second row very tight at the moment. I am expecting this to be an extremely close qualifying. There's a tenth and a half currently separating second and sixth, and I expect we're going to get a few more drivers in that kind of gap. Which of the Red Bulls is this? This is Hugo doing an 11.7. We'll definitely be looking to improve on that. Looks like he probably bailed out of it as the battery was up around 80-ish%, finishing the lap as George heads back to the pits. This is going to be Luke, I think, heading in as well. No, Luke has carried on, done a second lap. It goes a couple of tenths faster, a 10.6 there for the McLaren driver. Jumps up to P2 ahead of Cameron and Quentin and Martin. So the championship protagonists showing up at the front once again, as Theo to the line, I think just starting a lap, was on an 11.1 from earlier, so we'll be hoping to get up in and around the 10s as Bayard comes over the line with an 11.3, P9 at the moment. About 8 tenths off that current fastest lap set by Iron. As Alfie Harvey, first race of the season for the McLaren driver. Real life kind of getting in the way a little bit for Alfie. Jumps up to P7, so Luke's going to have a bit of help here from a teammate, which he hasn't had so far this season, as Hugo didn't improve, stays in that 11.7, and I think Fraser's probably just starting a lap there, as Luke is, now he's heading back into the pits. And how is Quentin doing? Quentin's just starting a lap. Followed by new reserve driver Furkan Imtiaz, who is replacing Johnny Foss today. Johnny's got some form of disease or illness that's preventing him from racing, unfortunately. I think it's just a case of him being Norwegian. As Theo jumps up to P7 with an 11.0, so this is getting very, very tight in and around that high 10s, low 11s sort of threshold. Fraser's currently P12, just 8 tenths off pole, which kind of shows just how tight we are here on the grid. And there's obviously a couple of drivers at the back you would expect to get in and amongst it as well, the likes of Justin and George, not with competitive times on the board at the moment. So let's jump on with Justin here, as he's a thousandth up on his first sector. So there's probably a mistake later on in the lap as he swings the Mercedes around Shrivelac and just completely avoids that inside curve. You can ride the inside of it, but it can be a little bit sketch if you take too much. That's sort of a double-leveled curve as he flicks it through the twisty middle sector. This is what you want the wings for. It's where you want the downforce. It's the DRS Open down this back straight. It's a little bit of a pointless zone in the race in terms of overtaking, but obviously is quite useful as Justin finds himself 7 seconds up at the moment. If that 120.4 was a bailed lap, then there should be more time here in this final sector as well, as he runs quite wide through the second last corner, but doesn't get unsettled by the outside curb, although it can kind of do that to the car. Justin keeps it all nice and tidy and goes just behind Ian, a 10.5 for himself, and Thomas Grad behind with a 10.547, 4 thousandths quicker than the Flying Dutchman, who is just coming around to start a lap, so we'll see if he can find that little bit of time he needs, as Cameron is going to bail off his and dive into the pits. Currently it's at P5 though, having a good performance so far. The Alpine driver, Luke's just coming around to start a lap, so Martin is backing right off, so I wonder if he's out of fuel. Probably. Could be just been going around a little bit too long and has run out of fuel, because he would have been going much sooner than that. Or maybe he's picked up a little bit of damage on his lap somewhere. Furkan has unfortunately invalidated. So let's see what George can do. I think this might be another outlap potentially. No, it is a valid, but it's only 120, so there must have been a mistake in there somewhere. Quentin to the line, he's a 10th up currently, and maintains that gap and goes just behind his teammate up into P4 at 10.6. Justin's just heading back into the pit, so the next man to finish a lap is going to be Bayard Bello. And, oh, sorry, he is just starting one, unfortunately, so we're going to go back to Ian, who takes the shortest run to the line, does find that little bit he needs, a 10.5 still, but crucially, 300ths of a second quicker than he went last time, and puts him on pole by 28 thousandths of a second. I did say this is going to be a very tight quali. One mistake can make the difference between being P1 or around about P8 at the moment. There's 3.5 tenths covering the top 8. As Luke puts himself in the 10.5s as well, finds a little bit of time, jumps above Quentin, manages to split the Mercedes, putting that McLaren on the second row. Decent lap there from Luke, who's going to be looking to have a significantly better race than last week, where he unfortunately crashed out, so failed to score any points, stretching that lead at the top of the standings for Ian from a single point up to 19, as Ian took second place in that race. Is Baird heading back to the pits? I think he probably is. No, he was just starting a lap last time, so yes, this is going to be a 10.7 for Bayard, so puts himself up in P6, but he's 6th and within 2 tenths of pole, which is a little crazy. Let's go on with Cameron, his teammate, who's just heading round the final corner to begin a lap. I think he's going to be the first man on what is probably going to be his last run. It's going to be tricky to get this lap in and then get the in lap in and get back in time to go again, although maybe possible, but he is the only man on a flying lap, so let's stick on with Cameron for now as he swings it through the very steeply backed corner of turn 3. Line of the game, they're very, very different to what they use in real life. Swinging up wide and high doesn't benefit you in the game anything like as much, unless you're specifically trying to overtake, and Cameron with a purple sector 1, he's a quarter of a second up. So if he can maintain this, maybe find a little bit more through the final 2 sectors, this could be looking at another driver in the 10.5 and making 5 of them at the top. Cameron says he's done quite a bit of practice for this race, and it's showing with some quite impressive pace here from the Northern Irishman. He's 4 tenths up. What is this? If Cameron keeps this lap, it's going to be on pole by about 2 tenths. Is this the track ramping up, or is this Cameron's just really nailed this lap as he gets through that final corner nicely and flat out through the final banking? DRS open and down to the line, keeping the shortest run possible. It's a 10.4, so lost a little bit of time in that final sector, but jumps up to P1. This is going to be a surprise, I think, for pretty much everyone in here. No disrespect to Cameron, but if he manages to beat all the ABS guys and Ian and Luke as well, like they're fighting for the title and they're about to get beaten by a guy who just got promoted by F2, which is rather impressive. As Luke's in this train. Alfie's just starting a lap. I'm not sure if anybody else is on one. I don't believe they are. George, possibly? Why is that giving me a McLaren? I don't want a McLaren. I want a Ferrari. Here we go. Yeah, I think George is just starting. Yes. So George is just starting a lap, so we will go back on with Alfie, see how he's getting on. He's 3/10 down in Sector 1. I think the smart thing here would be to bail, and he has. He's turned that battery off and will not be looking to improve. Just recharge the battery and go again. Not a terrible idea here at Zandvoort, as the tyres do take a little while to really get going. As Quill's just starting one as well, the Williams driver. Needs to be careful here of the Mercedes exiting the pit lane ahead of him. And I think he's just about going to have enough space to get going on that lap. Hugo just starting as well. As Cameron's binned it, so no chance. Oh, he's retired in the pits. Never mind. I thought he'd crashed. But no, Cameron has retired in the pits. So, who's going to be first? Alfie, obviously having done the recharge on the second half of that lap, although maybe doesn't quite have enough battery to really go for this. See whereabouts he can get that McLaren. Can he get up around where Luke is? Needs to find about half a second to match his teammate. We'll be looking to put it as high up as possible. Both Mercedes and both Alfa Romeo is currently ahead of the second McLaren driver as he runs very wide and on the exit of Shrivelac, and that is a McLaren that will not be improving as Iron jumps 400ths ahead of Cameron Don to reclaim that provisional pole position. Here's Thomas Grad to the line. Oh, he's just starting a lap, so they are managing just about to get the laps in, but he's not left a huge amount of space to the Mercedes ahead of him, which was Quentin, who's also on a lap, so hopefully he doesn't get held up and potentially compromised. Just in behind them has got a nice amount of space to work with, but as everyone's probably going to be coming to finish off their final lap here, there's not too long left in the session, just about 17 seconds, so this is going to be Imchaz's final tilt at it. Can he get that Red Bull higher up the grid? Currently P9. Filling in again for Johnny Foss, and it's a 10.5. Finds 3/10, jumps up to P5. Next to the line. Was that Quill? Or must have been Lucas that came to the line. Yeah, Lucas slightly improved, but didn't gain any positions from it. Let's hop on with Theo, who's a couple of tenths down, needs to push hard through these final couple of corners. Is the time still there in Sector 3 for an improvement from the AlphaTauri? It is. He finds another 10th, but it doesn't get... just keeps him ahead of Quill, who, speaking of, has jumped into the pits. Here's Thomas Grad, also heading back in. So we've got Fraser, who's getting a bit sideways out of the final corner. Oh, because he has no front wing, so that makes a lot of sense. And then we're going to just have Iron just cruising his way into the pit lane. And Martin, not so much. Crashing into the pit lane. And everyone went out a little earlier, so I think that might be everyone done. So that is going to be our grid for the race here. So Ian Bilbas takes pole position with a surprise front row start for the Alpine of Cameron Don. Alpine's first front row of the season. Thomas Grad and Justin Chevalier, two of the ABS drivers, get there on row 3. Followed by Furkan Imtiaz and Luke Mills, Red Bull and McLaren on that third row. And then Quentin Hesch in the second Mercedes and Bayard Bello in the second Alpine on the fourth row. Martin Ivanov and Theo Smith make up row 5 with Quil Pavakovic and Hugo Nilsson on row 6. Avi Harvey and George Parr row 7 and Lucas Rudd and Fraser Hart at the back of the grid. Just have to wait for them to wheel the Mercedes and the Williams back into the garage. And there we go. See, I am pole by 400ths of a second. Then there's a gap of a tenth. And then look at this. 10.5, 5, 5, 6, 6, 10.8, 10.9, 10.9. Like, there's half a second between P2 and P11. We did say it was going to be pretty tight here at Zandvoort. And then there's only another 3 tenths to the back of the grid. So every single driver within a second. Which is pretty mega. Zandvoort does tend to generate close competition in qualifying, quite a short lap. But there's plenty of ability to work harder on the corners to find time, find places. Just all the drivers doing it pretty well. As we're going to head onto the grid for what is going to be quite an I think for the grid this close, I think everyone's going to be pretty tight with each other, so I'll have to see how aggressive our drivers decide to get, where they decide a move might be a good idea and where it probably isn't. Being Zandvoort, it probably isn't, definitely takes precedent, as can be a little carnage. And don't be surprised if we see at least one safety car. They're pretty common around here. In league racing, it's very difficult to do. Let's hope it's dry as well. Well, it's kind of cloudy, and it is the Netherlands, so there is definitely the chance of rain. Very similar weather to what we have in the UK, so rain is definitely not out of the equation. Let's see, can I have a look? Is my race director going to work this week? It is not. So I can't take a look at tyres, unfortunately, so we'll just have to see what everyone's doing when we get underway. Just 3 seconds until the lights now. Can Cameron get a good start from P2, or will he get swallowed up by the guys behind? As we've got 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go in Zandvoort. Iron gets a pretty good start. Thomas Grad behind, looking for a gap on that front too. Can't quite seem to find a way through, but Cameron gets off the line brilliantly and up into the lead. Thomas trying to make a move through turn 2 here on Iron. Has the inside line. Give each other space. Iron on those hard tyres. He's going to have to get a little bit defensive here against the Alfa Romeo, but Thomas is just going to drive around the outside of turn 4. Get alongside through the quick sweeps on the run down into Shrivelac, and that is P2 for the Alfa Romeo driver. Further back, there's some position changes going on with the other Ferrari of George Power. Is going to go side by side with Hugo Nelson through Shrivelac. Hugo manages to fend him off and just keep that place. George starting on the soft tyres. He's going to look to get racy early. Let's take a quick gander at tyres here. So we've got Grad, Hesh, Pavlakovic, Nilsson, Harvey and Fraser Hart all on those medium tyres. And just George starting on the softs, as we might get 3 wide here down the back straight. George just about fends them off. There's a little bit of contact between Lucas Rudd and Alfie Harvey, but all seems fair and above board. Everyone gets through there without any trouble. Fraser Hart looking for a gap behind. Just can't really seem to find one, but he's going to look for a lunge on Alfie, I think. Decides to back out of that. Probably the smart thing to do. And this front two is taking off. Thomas looking for a move on Cameron around the outside in Tarzan. Cameron takes a very good defensive line. Thomas tries a little undercut. Those medium tyres are going to have to fire up here if he wants to get past the Alpine. Looks for an inside line into 4. Cameron covers that one off as well nicely. Manages to maintain the lead, and this is going to lose them time to Iron and Firkin behind them. We're going to bring that whole train with them. Just look at the train of cars there as they sweep through the first sector. Quentin looks for a move down the inside of Shrivelac on Luke. Luke gets a bit of a snap. Quentin, with those medium tyres, manages to make the place on the McLaren, but Luke's going to come back at him here into the middle sector, and there's McLaren's round. A little bit of contact there. I'm not sure if Luke really got close enough before they got onto the brakes. We'll probably end up taking a look at that in the stewarding room afterwards. But for now, Quentin holds the place, and Luke drops all the way to the back. We'll be looking for a safety car to really maximise this race. Let's jump back on with this front two. See if Thomas can make a move this time around into Tarzan, or will the better chance come next lap? As we see the predicted strategy around lap 16 to 20 to go from the mediums onto some hard tyres. As Thomas does get down the inside and make the move, although he's used quite a lot of battery in order to do that, down to just about 30%. So really needs to build a gap here on Cameron. If Cameron can hang with the Alfa Romeo, he's going to get the advantage of that DRS, which Iron is just about hanging into. As we've got some side-by-side going on further back between Martin Ivanov and Kul Pavlakovic. Martin manages to make the place up into P7, but Quill on those medium tyres is going to be looking for a way through to get their Williams a bit further up onto the back of the two Mercedes, as McLaren now rounding out the grid, as Alfie Harvey has unfortunately had a bit of a spin on the exit of Shriveblack, probably a little similar to what he did in qualifying, so unfortunate there for Alfie's debut this season. And Cameron is hanging on to Thomas at the front, just about maintaining that gap to Iron and Furkan behind. Iron's gained a couple of tenths maybe, but not too much more than that. But I think Cameron's probably going to be a bit too far back here to go for a move on Thomas, unless he has some slightly illegal wings on that car. As Thomas does set a new fastest lap, trying to stretch the field out here, trying to stretch the gap. There's little windows starting to open where people are dropping out of DRS. But with the help of the DRS and those soft tyres, George has managed to make a move on Theo Smith, and we've got a car around, and that's Quill Pavlakovic. And I don't think Quill's got a front wing anymore, which is not ideal for the Williams. No, some damage there, and it's a full safety car, because Quill spun and blew their wing up. So that is interesting. Having tried to do a strategy of pitting onto hard tyres yesterday on lap 8, I can confirm they won't go to the end from here. But we are definitely going to see a couple of drivers in. Wouldn't surprise me too much if somebody like George Parr pits onto some medium tyres if he has a couple of sets available, potentially. Although starting on the softs, I would imagine he chose the softer compound strategy to have as many softs as possible for qualifying. So we may just have the one set of hards and one set of mediums available. But we're definitely going to see Quill in to get a new front wing. I'm not sure if we're going to see anybody else either. Luke appears to be backing up slightly here. Maybe just be saving some fuel, or could just be some standard Delta things. Delta does like to do that. As the front 6, Quentin's in. So Quentin's in off those medium tyres from P6, because it slowed down nicely for the pit lane. Followed in by Hugo Nelson, also off the mediums. And George Parr off the soft, so it's going to be hard tyres on pretty much the entire grid here. I think just Fraser's going to stay out. Maybe Alfie at the back, although I don't think it's a smart play. No, Alfie does dive into the pits, and that's quite impressive, really. We had 4 people pit, and nobody got a penalty for doing so. But they're just going to make those for Quentin, Hugo, George, and Alfie the back 4 on the grid. So they're going to have some places to make up with that slight tyre advantage. Quill stayed out, which is interesting. I think Quill's going to pit for a new front wing this lap, probably, and just doesn't want to lose any tyre temperature here under safety car. It can't come in this lap, as this is its first full lap. It has to do at least one more. And also Alfie's quite a way off the back, so might not even be in a position to catch. But I definitely think we're going to see Quill in here. Hopefully Lucas doesn't pit ahead of them as well. Ugh, quite a eventful opening 3.5 or 4 laps. But it's surprising that Quill losing his front wing, their front wing, sorry, on pit exit, caused a full safety car. Because I didn't really see anything else kick off that would have contributed to that, so an interesting one, definitely. And safety cars are on reduced here in GRS, as is pretty standard for league racing, really. If you have safety cars on standard or increased, they kind of just get thrown for absolutely anything. And you just kind of ruin the whole spectacle of the race when the first, like, 15 laps are also done to safety car. As yeah, Quill does come in. So there's going to be a new front wing on that Williams. They get slowed down nicely before the pit line. You do have to brake quite early with no front wing. It does definitely impact your front braking ability. And it is going to be some hard tyres going on the Williams. But again, probably won't be able to get those to the end. Quill is very, very good with tyre wear, but the tyres around here, they're just not really capable of doing that many laps. But we'll see. This is the kind of thing that Quill might try. And it will definitely help if Quill can make it work. They're going to be on the back of the train here, and whichever one is going to have to pit. Oh dear, Fraser has somehow binned it under safety car. That potentially is just some tyre warming gone quite wrong. Oh, and he's half on the track. So yeah, I think what's probably happened there is Fraser has likely caught some grass. And the car's just been speared into a wall, unfortunately. So that's going to be our first DNF of the race. Which just kind of explains the safety car. Even though it was deployed a couple of laps ago. And I think it is going to stay out here. No, that's a very, very late call for Thomas. That's pretty unfortunate. Hopefully we don't have a big pile up here coming through the second last corner. Everyone needs to get hard on the anchors to avoid running into anybody ahead of them. Let's hop on board with Iron here for this restart from third place, and Thomas has gone quite early and caught Iron completely napping. Cameron's gone with the leader, but Iron's going to come under some pressure potentially here from Imchaz. Manages to maintain P3. I don't think Furkan wants to get too heavily involved in this. Happy just to maintain position. Luke's already up to P9. Makes a move through Tarzan on Lucas Road, so a good restart from the McLaren driver. And Martin Ivanov making a move on Justin Chevalier as they're going to go side by side through Sector 1. Justin manages to keep the place for now, stays P5 in the Mercedes. As Luke's taking a look around the outside of Shrivelack on Theo Smith, there's no way he's going to make that stick. How much tyre temperature does Luke have? Oh, very nice move there from the McLaren driver. This is the opportunity Luke needed after that contact with Quentin earlier to try and push up the field as Martin Ivanov's gone round in front, and that gifts everybody behind a free place, putting Luke up into P7 now, chasing Beod Bello, who is still within that 1 second window of the guys ahead, as Hugo and George are going side by side again here through the third sector. George just has to back out there. Hugo with just the overspeed, probably a little bit of deployment there from the Red Bull driver as Thomas sets a new fastest lap and has pulled 1.3 seconds on Cameron at the front. So managed to fire those medium tyres up after the restart. George is going to look down the inside of Tarzan on Hugo. And they're going to go side by side here, the Ferrari and the Red Bull. And joined by a Lucas Rudd who took a bit of a detour. We're 3 wide in Sector 1. George backs out, but he kind of has to, as Alfie's getting involved in this now, and Quill. So this is a proper gaggle of 5 here. Both Williams, 1 Red Bull, 1 McLaren, 1 Ferrari. That's not something you're likely to see in real F1. But that's what you get in GRS. Equal cars mean more fun, to be completely honest. Nobody wants to see the same 2 or 3 teams at the front every race. As Hugo's going to see if he can find a way past Lucas Rudd here. Lucas doesn't have DRS when it opens, which is going to be next lap. So there's going to be no rear wing opening at this time. But George gets a great drive off the corner. He's going to try make a move on Quill. Quill holds that inside line though, can just squeeze George out of it. And George sensibly backs out, doesn't get involved in any sort of contact with the Williams. He's going to look to come again into the next couple of corners, as there we see the DRS enabled as Thomas still stretching a little bit at the front, but Cameron's managed to break away from Iron as well, so potentially a mistake there from the Ferrari driver, or just maybe a lot more pace from the Alpine of Cameron. As Luke has managed to make a move now on Beod Bello and put himself up into P6, but needs to close up that 3/4 gap up to the Mercedes of Justin Chevalier to make sure he gets that DRS rear wing opening. Justin might be losing a little bit of time with the dirty air of the cars ahead, and Luke will be hoping that is going to enable him to catch up. Although I think Luke has probably spent quite a lot of battery to make some of those moves, so might not really have much left in order to chase the Mercedes ahead. Gap kind of hanging around 1.3. Which is going to be a bit of a problem. Ian, Furkan and Justin ahead all will be in a little DRS train, and they might start to drop Luke slightly here in that McLaren. Having done very well to clear the traffic quickly, he now needs to really get his foot down and try and pull away from it. He's already pulled 9/10 on Beod, but Beod Bello is going to get the DRS down this pit straight and allow him to close back in on the McLaren a little bit. And Luke is already flashing, has spent his battery down into single figures. Everyone around hanging on to a fair bit, although Thomas Crowd has dumped quite a lot early after this safety car restart as well to get down the road a bit from Cameron, although Cameron's maintaining that gap. Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of battery we're talking about on the Alpine. Also very low on the Alpine, so he's been spending to try and break away from Iron, and it's just not paid off. But it just isn't quite close enough to really mount a challenge on Thomas. I'll try and stick with the Alfa Romeo, but, well, if he can finish P2, Cameron, this is going to be a very, very good result for the Alpine team and the Alpine driver. He's recently promoted from F2, as I said, in quali, and managed to gain a Alpine seat when one became available. We'll be looking to find as many points as possible for the French team. Our plan was to get an F2 driver in the car, apparently. And Cameron's going pretty well, losing still a little bit to Thomas, but Iron's coming with, but they are, both of them, kind of dropping Imchaz a little bit. A couple of tenths out of that DRS range. And with 2 trains of 2 here, 2nd and 3rd and 4th and 5th, that might help Luke out a little bit. He's managed to break the DRS to Bayard behind, but isn't closing in on these guys. Kind of needs to start saving up some of that battery, if at all possible. As speaking of battery, Iron's got tons. So Iron's chilling. Iron's happy here just to sit behind Cameron. Use the DRS, maybe save some tyre wear. Save some battery. Maybe even save some fuel. I know Iron was a little bit worried about fuel around here. Although that one safety car will probably have helped with that. To just allow him to extend that fuel usage on that Ferrari. But it's all settled down a bit now. There's still that big train at the back behind Hugo. Hugo is the conductor extraordinaire with Lucas Rudd, Quil Pavakovic, George Part, Alfie Harvey, and Martin Ivanov's joining on the back of this as well, all sat behind the Red Bull. Lucas chooses not to go for a move into here. Possibly a track limit warning there for George Parr, as he took an awful lot of that curb on the inside. But is Hugo going to be able to fend anybody off into Tarzan here? If Lucas gets a good drive through these final couple of corners, lost a little bit of time. And he's actually going to come under attack from his teammate as Quill's going to get both of them. Quil with an absolute missile in a straight line has just made 2 moves into Tarzan. Got Lucas almost coming out of the final corner. And then managed to use the DRS to drag past Hugo as well. And Quil will be hoping to put that straight line speed to use and pull away from the Red Bull driver. Gap's already put to half a second. Hugo didn't get the best line there through turn 4. And here we see something sort of straight, which is going to allow Quil to kind of drive off a little bit. And even through Shrivelac as well. Is Quil spending a lot of battery here? Well, Quil kind of has hold of a lot of it still, so I guess not. But Hugo manages to close up a little bit there through the middle sector, so this is going to remain a train. And that DRS for the Red Bull is going to help him keep the swarm behind for another few laps, especially if he can hang on to Quil. Although I wouldn't be too surprised to see Quil spending quite a lot of those yellow flags for Martin Ivanov again at the back, so a little bit of a half spin more than anything else there. As Iron's going for a move in Tarzan, goes around the outside of Cameron, and a great play there from the Ferrari driver up into P2, so Iron's kind of bored of just sitting around. Can see Thomas getting away a little bit up in front. Needs to start trying to close this gap up if he wants to win yet another race this season. Won the first 2, Iron, and then consecutive 2nd place finishes. Oh, sorry, no. 4th, I believe, in Jeddah. Though Iron is on a controller, so is a very, very difficult track. For controllers versus wheels, especially when the pace differential between the drivers is a couple of tenths at most tracks. That controller definitely having a disadvantage. And then a 2nd place in Portimao means that Iron is leading the championship by 19 points from Luke. So even a P2 here would be pretty good, but Iron is, of course, going to want to win. Champion last season. Doesn't want the risk of any of Thomas or maybe even Justin or Quentin getting too close in that championship standings with the points. But those medium tyres for Thomas are starting to get a little bit second-hand, so expect Iron and his Ferrari to start closing in now at a decent rate. As Luke is just about on the back of Furkan and Justin, although there's a 2-second gap ahead of Furkan now. He's kind of backing Justin up into Luke a little bit. Luke's going to be hoping to get that rear wing open sooner rather than later. Little burst of what little battery he has left is going to close him up just momentarily into that 1-second window. But it's also bringing Bayode with as well. Bayode has a little bit more battery to spend, can just eke it out a bit better, find that bit more time and close up to within a second. So all 4 of these guys now are going to fit themselves nicely into a train. You see the rear wing open there on the McLaren and the Alpine driver. Going to give them that straight line speed advantage they need to really close on the back of Furkan and Justin. Justin needs to make this move sooner rather than later. 2.5 seconds now, the gap ahead of Furkan. And, well, doesn't want to get stuck here too much in the Mercedes. Is he going to look for a move into Tarzan down the inside? Easily ahead by the corner. Furkan's going to try and fight this around the outside, but just doesn't quite have the line or the traction to do so, and that promotes the Mercedes driver up into P4. So Furkan breaks a bit late for turn 4, and that's going to allow Luke to close that gap in by a few tenths. As he's once again dropped Bayode, so I wonder if Luke was maybe having a couple of recharge laps just to allow him to really come again. Although is very, very low on battery at the moment, kind of spending everything they've got. And Iron just about dropping Cameron out of the DRS as well, so this could turn into a little bit of a 2-horse race here. If Iron can find that bit of pace to catch up to Thomas. And of course, the benefit of these hard tyres, especially with a few guys who stopped later, maybe going quite long and fitting some softs for the end of the race. Quill potentially even trying to get to the end, as Quill has very quickly cruised up to the back of Quentin Hesh. And the Williams driver is going to look for a move for P9 here. Let's just witness Quill's straight line speed in first person. Still has plenty of battery to play with, about 50% in the Williams. Deploys just a little squirt out of the final corner. DRS open. Goes to the inside for Tarzan. Keeps their line and just nicely down the inside of Quentin. And up into P9. Mercedes looking for a way through, but there just isn't a gap there, as we've had Alfie Harvey around again. That is unfortunately going to drop him back to the back of the field, but gets all going again in the McLaren. See if there is any damage on that car. Nothing we can see. All seems to still be intact, so Alfie will be hoping for another safety car just to close the field back up. But I think some of these drivers definitely will be hoping that we don't have any of those. But Quill is flying at the moment. Up to P9 on some hard tyres. They are maybe going to try and get to the end. Everyone ahead of Quill definitely has to stop, as they have not yet. Quentin behind, if his tyre wear is as good as Quill's, as Tom Sherrod's in. So leader pits off the medium tyres, so it's going to be a set of hards for the Alfa Romeo. Let's see where he comes out. I think this might be just ahead of Alfie. I think everybody else has managed to stay within a pit window, so for Thomas to gain here on Iron, who's going to have that clean air, he really needs to find a way through traffic quickly, and it's going to bring him out right in the middle of this train, and this is not where he wants to emerge from the pit lane, as he's going to be tucked up behind his teammate with those cold hard tyres, as Martin goes for a move on the inside of George through turn 4. I'm not sure that was the smartest thing I've ever seen, but it definitely worked. Maybe a little bit of a punt to pass, but would have to see both POVs to really make a judgment on that. But we might see George here trying to back Thomas up a little bit just to allow Iron to get that overcut, lapping still pretty quickly, pretty consistently on those hard tyres. Still within the 13.7s, which is where Iron's current fastest lap sits. So they really don't drop off too much here until you get kind of up into the 20s in terms of lap count. They're pretty sturdy. So anything that George can do to kind of back Thomas up a little bit, these guys lapping around a second off Iron's pace. Although Hugo has managed to close up onto the back of Quentin as well, who's losing a bit of time behind Quill. So this is going to be one big train, and this is going to be one big train that Thomas has to somehow find his way through. which is not going to be easy to do. This is going to turn into a race of how many positions can you clear and how quickly can you do it to not lose time to anybody who is overcutting you. The undercut generally pretty good here around Zandvoort. The tyres don't really seem to lose any pace because of the fuel burn, but new boots are always a lot quicker. As Thomas is going to look for it into Shrivelak, and George just parks it in the middle of the track and won't allow the Alfa Romeo a way through. Goes a little defensive there on the start of Sector 2. Chooses not to defend a dive to the inside there, but Thomas smart enough not to go for it. George needs to be careful to not lose DRS here and put himself really under pressure. Manages to get that rear wing open, and he's going to close in a little bit as we've got yellow flags for Alfie Harvey once again. But it's not going to interfere with this battle. This train that heads up to P8, and that's Lucas Rudround. So that is one car cleared for Thomas Grad to lose as little time as possible. But George on those mediums is going to be able to hold the Alfa Romeo off here. I think Thomas is going to spend what battery he has, but there's not an awful lot of it. Managed to get down the inside on George going into Tarzan, but George is going to try and drive it around the outside. Doesn't quite make it work. And that is one position gain there for Thomas Grad up into P12 now. Will his teammate Martin Ivanov get out of the way and allow him through? Or will we not see any team orders here at Alfa Romeo as Alfie gets 5 seconds speeding in the pit lane and unfortunately retires from the session. Probably picked up some damage there from the few spins he had that lap. Or maybe was carrying it from earlier and just made the car very unstable. So a disappointing debut to the season from Alfie. Not able to pick up any points to help Luke out. Who, speaking of, will just quickly jump away from Thomas's attempt to clear the traffic. Is on the back now of Justin and Furkan. So who's going to blink first out of these guys? I think we are going to see them all kind of going long if anybody communicating with their teammates who happen to be in that train. So the likes of Justin and Furkan will know that Thomas is there from Quentin and Hugo. And perhaps Luke got the knowledge from Alfie as well before his retirement. As Martin Ivanov is actually getting on with it, trying to make a move here on Hugo Nilsson. They're going to go side by side into turn 4. Martin leaves the Red Bull room. He's going to try and swing around the outside, get the better drive. Manages to do so. A good move there from the Alfa Romeo, and now Hugo is going to have that second Alfa Romeo behind him. Doesn't have a teammate to protect in terms of the Drivers' Championship up ahead. Although any holding off Hugo can do here is going to help Red Bull in terms of the Constructors' points, with Imchaz currently running nicely in P4 in that second group. As Hugo gets a bit wide there in the middle sector, and that might introduce Thomas onto the back of the Red Bull. Maybe a outside chance of a move, chooses not to go for it. As Cameron Don is in from P2. But I think Cameron's not going to have gained enough time here as Luke's in as well as Imchaz. I don't think they're going to have gained enough time here to jump this train. I think they're going to come out right in it as Theo Smith picks up 5 seconds speeding in the pit lane. He's going to be added to his race time at the end unless we get a safety car and another pit stop. Thomas is going to look down the inside into Tarzan. Sticks nice and tight to that inside curb, and they're going to come out with Cameron Don. Cameron's right behind this. So has gained a little bit from that overcut, but not quite enough to really get on terms with Thomas. But that's a lot of the traffic kind of gone out of the way now. There's a big gap ahead of Thomas, and he's not going to have any DRS assistance at the moment, as Quill and Martin Ivanov have kind of left a little bit. But there is that big gap between Quill and Bello currently running P3, but that is the difference of having already made a pit stop under safety car. And then the time lost in traffic as much as anything else. Aside from that, everybody behind Hugo here, so from Cameron backwards as Hugo just about hangs on to DRS, maybe going to allow him to defend from the Alpine. Cameron chooses not to go for a move as Iron pits. So Iron is in from the lead. That's going to give Justin and Bayode both in as well. So Quill is going to lead this race. Quill is going to be able to jump ahead of all of these guys, although Iron's car is already moving. I don't think the gap was sufficient to allow Quill to stay ahead as... was that Hugo? I think that was Hugo crossing the pit entry white line, so that's a report as Irons managed to stay ahead of Quill. So Iron manages to overcut everyone and stays ahead of the Williams driver. And Quill on those old tyres, I'm not sure they're going to be able to stick with the Ferrari here once the mediums get up to temperature. But this is kind of perfect for Iron. Has a bit of a buffer here to Thomas, has a gap between them, and there's two cars nicely sat within it. Which might be giving Thomas some DRS assistance he wouldn't already get, as he's going to close in quite rapidly on those two, as Martin's going to go for a move on Quill. Quill just about fends the Alfa Romeo off, although I think Martin's got the DRS and Quill's just got so few wings that they don't care. Just absolutely drives away down that DRS straight. But if they can hang within the DRS here, Quill's not going to get touched into Tarzan. Martin Ivanov's just not going to have anything to go with. Martin on the oldest tyres out of everyone yet to pit. Might see him in here, we do. So Ivanov into pit lane. And I thought he'd sped then, but no, it's just the new fastest lap for Cameron. Looking to make a move on Thomas Grad. Thomas on those 6-lap old hard tyres. Cameron's on some new mediums, the same as Iron. He's going to be looking to make a move, regain what is essentially a net P2. Unless Quill does some magic with those tyres and somehow gets them to the end. They're on 45% wear at the moment, with another 13 laps to go. We're going to be looking somewhere in the 80s, so we might see a late-ish pit stop from Quill onto some softs. But there's going to be a hell of a lot of traffic for them to clear to get back in this kind of position. As Cameron almost pushing Thomas here through the middle sector. Thomas is going to hang on to the DRS, though, to protect himself from the Alpine driver, but Quill's got so much straight-line speed here, it might not even matter. Quill kind of still pulls away down that straight, not enough to break the DRS. And definitely not enough to hang on to Iron, who has kind of cruised off, as we see Red Bulls swapping. And oh, that's a bit of a dangerous re-entry there from Furkan, and it's kind of caused contact with about 3 cars. That puts Hugo up to P5, but Hugo on old tyres as well, trying to do the same strategy as Quill, as Iron sets a new fastest lap, so he's going to be looking for maximum points here. And we're going to have Luke going for a move on Hugo here, down the pit straight into Tarzan. Manages to get there, and Justin's going to go for a late move as well. A bit of a send from the Mercedes. They're going to go side by side through Tarzan, bit of wheel banging. Can we... this might be a little bit reminiscent of real life, Zambot, if we get lucky this season. Mercedes and Red Bull brushing wheels side by side through Tarzan. That would be fun for, I think, everyone to watch. If we can actually see that Red Bull challenge this season. But Justin manages to make the move. Now we've got Imchaz looking to find a way past Hugo. Definitely on the quicker tyres. Should have a much faster package underneath him. And doesn't want to get attacked by Baywood behind, as Imchaz looks for a move around the outside here in the middle sector. But Hugo just doesn't want to lose any time allowing his teammate through. Imchaz does manage to get past. They both had DRS, so I guess maybe just didn't deploy any battery there, Hugo, and kind of allowed Imchaz to spend a little bit, maybe a couple of percent, and make the move. But Imchaz has unfortunately lost DRS to Luke and Justin ahead, so won't be getting that advantage. But we've got Thomas and Cameron on the back of Quill here. Quill manages to fend the move off into Tarzan. Takes a nice tight inside line and just make sure they keep it tight to stop Thomas cutting underneath. And this is going to be very, very difficult here through this middle end of the first sector and into the second for Thomas or Cameron to make a move. Quill can just kind of park it roughly in the centre of the track. And apologies, had a long day. And there isn't really any way to get through. Quill's going to maintain P2. Thomas looks for a move down the inside. This is where we saw contact with Luke and Quentin earlier. Quill makes sure there's no contact there. Just goes a little wider than the apex. Although it was a bit of a send from Thomas. And that is going to compromise them through the middle sector. Cameron looked for a move there into this chicane. Just couldn't quite find a way. Needs to make the most of those tyres while they are still shiny and fresh. For the last 2 or 3 laps, the hards may be better than the mediums here. Cameron can't afford to lose too much time fighting with Thomas and Quill. And Quill's still hanging on to those boots. 53% now, with another 10 laps to go. So there is definitely a possibility to get them to the end. That's 53% in 20 laps and another 11 to go, so they're going to be a little square as Cameron seems to get a bit sideways there, maybe completely locked up going into turn 4, but didn't lose too much time. He's still going to be on the back of these two. He just needs to make sure he's faster than Quill, basically. Let's take a look behind what else is going on. So the only other cars really in DRS of each other. Justin has DRS on Luke. Luke's looking to try and close in on this group of 3 currently fighting over second place. And Imchaz has DRS on Bayard Bellowed chasing after these two. As Bayard gets out on the grass going through the middle sector, and this is going to put Imchaz right on the back of the Alpine. But I don't think he's going to be close enough to make a move. They have kind of dropped Hugo pretty quickly, though. Although Hugo's going to have to pitch, surely, at some point. 54% on Hugo's tyres. They're actually slightly less worn than Quill's, which is interesting. And Thomas still unable to find a way past Quill at the front. Williams doing a pretty stellar defensive job. I think Arya will be very pleased at this. So yeah, it's already built a 6.5 second lead out front. Currently lapping about a second faster than Quill, and Quill holding Thomas and Cameron back. They're just not able to find a way through. A tricky track to overtake on when the pace delta is only maybe about a second, as Quill is proving here. There's also the battery advantage and straight line advantage that Quill has. Is going to just make it even more difficult, as there's a little bit of contact there between Thomas and Cameron. I think Cameron was just being a little bit ambitious trying to get around the outside. A place where it's really not feasible. But this doesn't help that Cameron is flashing on battery, and his mirrors are going to be becoming increasingly more filled with the McLaren and Mercedes behind. And they're definitely coming. If Quill can hold all of this train behind them, then that could be a little bit spicy coming into the final few laps. Are we going to see a great result from a driver doing a very early stop onto hard tyres and managing to get them to the end for the second week running, after Johnny managed a win from doing that last week? Is that Lucas still out on those hard tyres that he hasn't pit from? So Lucas potentially looking at doing maybe a hard soft, but if that was the case, I would have imagined he'd already be in. You can get sort of loadable figures, numbers of laps out of softs here, maybe about 11 or 12. And so it definitely could have pit already, as Thomas is going to look for a move into the start of the DRS zone. Doesn't quite manage to get through there, but Quill may have been slightly compromised. Thomas starting to get a bit aggressive, trying to really force the issue, make a move. And this backing up from Quill has put Luke and Justin right on the back of this train, and Thomas just cannot find a way through for love or money. Just absolutely nothing to be done against that Williams, although Thomas could not be closer tucked up behind that rear wing of Quill. I think we're going to see quite a lot of battery usage here from the Alfa Romeo, and Quill just manages to stay in front. The low wings on the Williams making it an absolute nightmare to try and overtake. It's just impossible to make a move into Tarzan. Quill didn't even spend any battery there. And Thomas literally couldn't have been closer without putting them in a wall. It's a great defensive display here, and we're just forming a train. Quill is the train conductor extraordinaire at the moment, as Martin Ivanov makes a move on those very old tyres of Lucas Rudd and the other Williams up into P11. We'll be looking to chase down Hugo and Theo for that final point, as there's a bit of contact there between Cameron and Thomas. Thomas had to catch a slide in the Alpha, and this is going to give Luke the opportunity to get down the inside into the chicane, giving each other space. Nice to see, but Luke is going to have the inside, but just chooses to slot in behind the Alfa Romeo. Hasn't really managed to save up too much in terms of the battery, though, after having to deploy all to clear traffic earlier. Probably spent a fair bit to catch up to the back of this train, which now stretches all the way down to Furkan Imtiaz in P8. from Quill in P2, and Quill still hanging on to this. 64% now on the tyre wear. This is going to be a bit of a display if they do manage to get those boots to the end. They're going to be a bit like 50p pieces at the end. But I mean, if they still go the right direction and they don't pop, we're going to be okay. Luke's going to try and move into Shrivelac. That's not the smartest thing to do. He chooses to back out of it, and now he's looking on the exit of Shrivelac. Just seems to have so much more pace in that McLaren. The medium tyres are really working out. Luke goes for the same move he tried on Quentin earlier. Backs out of this one smartly, and ooh, Justin has to take a bit of evasive action there as Luke tries to take back his racing line. Not quite able to find a way through, and this is starting to get a little feisty between 3 ABS drivers. As Cameron's managed to, and Bayard's managed to make a move on Justin as well, so Justin clearly had an issue somewhere in there, and has dropped back down to P7. That's going to give Luke a little bit of breathing room. But who really needs the breathing room here, I think, is Thomas, spending as much battery as possible to try and get past Quill, and just nothing doing. Iron's lead at the front is now out to 11.5 seconds. Iron's going to have no idea what's going on here, as Justin has unfortunately had a bit of a spin at Tarzan, and that is going to drop him places to Theo Smith at least. Hugo and Martin Ivanov not quite close enough to overtake the Mercedes as well. Luke's trying all sorts of different lines here to try and get a run on Thomas Grad. If Thomas has a bit of a snap somewhere trying to make a move on Quill, it has to back out. If Luke's taking weird different lines, as Thomas is going to try it in the middle sector again, Quill gives them space at the apex. Manages to maintain that P2 for now, and gets a good drive onto the second DRS straight, and isn't going to be too vulnerable into the chicane unless there's a bit of a send. There's a yellow flag further back, that's Martin Ivanov. But just a spin manages to get the Alfa Romeo going again. No safety car, so we're not going to be spoiled what is a pretty mega defensive display here from Quill. 68% on the tyres. They're starting to get into square range, speaking from experience. But does anybody have any battery to spend to make a move on the Williams? Thomas tries it into turn 1, and this time he gets a full car alongside. There's a little bit of contact, but I think that was all kind of fair and above board, although it has put Thomas on the back foot, and Luke is going to try it down the inside now. Manages to make a move into turn 4, and Thomas has gone around. I don't know if there was contact on the way there, or just maybe got on the outside curb a little bit. But that is very unfortunate for the Alfa Romeo, just not able to find a way past Quill. Can Luke fare any better? Medium tyres maybe are going to be the key to finding a way past this absolute missile of a Williams. It was Quill starting to feel the effects of those tyres now. Gets a big slide through the middle sector. That's going to put Luke slightly alongside, almost forced out of room. Trying to drive around the outside of that corner was never going to end particularly well, as to back out on the way into the chicane. Quill just driving pretty smart, driving pretty safe, as Bayard's now on the back of Luke as well. He's going to be looking to see if he can find a way through on his medium tyres. I don't think Luke has any battery to use here to try and close down on Quill. Gap at the front up to 14 seconds. Quill's tyres up to 71%, and there's still 4 laps to go. I don't think Quill's going to manage this 4 laps in 4%. But just sparking on every apex, not allowing any drivers behind to really get a run on him. Thomas pits for a new front wing and some soft boots to go steal that fastest lap point off of Iron. Quill's currently lapping in the high 14s, Iron in the low 13s, just to show how much of a time loss Thomas and now Luke were having. Luke gets down the inside, gets on that inside curb, unsells the car. There's a little bit of contact with the Williams. Bayard's going to have a chance for a move, but just doesn't quite have the straight line speed to make it, with both cars having the DRS. And Quill gets another big slide, and this is going to put Luke right on the back of them. Quill leaves just enough room on the run into the corner, and the straight line speed in that Williams is going to be pretty evident here, as Luke just can't seem to stick with, even with the DRS open. Bayard takes a bit of a look, but just nothing doing for the Alpine driver. As Luke tries a wide line through Tarzan to really get on the back of the Williams. We've had a spin. I'm not sure if that's Martin or Thomas. I believe it's Thomas. Maybe just lighting up some tyres, and there's big contact. Quill slightly off track. Luke gets through that unscathed, although was completely off track for a time, and it has unfortunately collected Bayard, and that's a spinning Alpine. Very unfortunate, and the man who has really benefited from all this is Furkan Imtiaz, who, from being a little bit off the back of the train, now finds himself running in a podium position with a 3-second gap back to Quill on those, well, I would say dying, but now very dead hard tyres. Imtiaz not going to be able to live with Luke, but Luke's definitely not going to be able to close on Iron, as there's just a lap and a half to go for the Ferrari driver, who has kind of been out on his own for most of this race after making the pit stop, managing to get the overcut on everyone, including Quill. Has just kind of had a free reign of it, managed to just drive off. Still sitting on 40% battery. Just hasn't had to spend anything, as not coming under attack. Probably spent a little bit coming out of the pits to get that fastest lap initially. But didn't need to really spend anything after that, and has pretty much just had a free run of it. So I think the next big fight that's going to be happening here is, can Hugo get those hards to the end? Quills are at 77%, Hugo's are at 75%. So he's doing a good job of looking after them, but we are now into puncture territory. And it is the front tyres that tend to go here, so around somewhere like Shrivelac, we could just see a tyre fail, which would be very unfortunate for either Quill or Hugo. Quill coming under attack from Justin, and this time, finally, someone manages to make an overtake on Quill. Without there being contact or anyone getting run off the road. So I think that's the first time Quill has been overtaking this race without someone crashing into someone else. And Justin up to P4 manages to make a move, but is Quill going to have sufficient traction, straight line speed and battery to come back at the Mercedes down this pit straight? The gap was about 0.6 at the start of the straight. We have had contact further back. Quill looks for a move to the inside of Tarzan. Doesn't manage to get through there. And unfortunate for the McLaren driver overall, as Martin Ivanov has left the session. So an unfortunate disconnect, but as it is the last lap, not going to lose too much in... Although the game is deciding to pit him, which is weird, but okay. Thomas has spun through the final corners, so it isn't even going to lose him a place, as Cameron has no front wing at all, which I didn't see. And is still somehow managing to hold on to that car. Can he keep this 3-second gap back to George Parr? As Iron's going to come over the line and win the race. A gap of 18 seconds to Luke Mill. Luke is barely in the final sector. Iron just completely untouched for the final laps of that one. As Quill's tyres finally gone. Quill has finally had a puncture, I think, or a bit of a spin. The tyres may actually still be alive. Just about. Just somehow, just about. As Quill is going to hang on for P6 ahead of Quentin Hesh. Theo Smith's penalty drops them to PA, and Cameron did manage to hold George off despite no front wing. Oof. Lost 2.5 seconds on the second half of that lap. But an absolute train. Iron wins the race. That was a mile clear in the end, being the only person that didn't have to find a way past Quill. Luke takes P2, having found a way past Quill. Although I'm pretty sure it was off track and there was contact. So we'll have to see if Luke's P2 is safe or not after stewarding. And then Imchaz on debut, filling in for Johnny Foss, manages to get a podium. So good result for the Red Bull team there after winning last time out with Johnny. Imchaz, as their reserve driver, manages to get a podium. So let's go and make sure this is all completed itself on my telemetry app. Now the game's being a little bit cursed. I haven't seen people leaving the session. Hopefully it carries on through to the necessary screens. So my telemetry doesn't bug out again. As it did last week, because that wasn't fun. Ah, yes, we are working. Good, good. And yes, yet another win for Iron, who just extends his championship lead. The lobbying game appears to be having some form of seizures, although my telemetry has completed itself now, so that's good. Just the one penalty in the race there with Theo Smith. Being up 5 seconds for speeding in the pit lane, unfortunately, cost them a few places, like 3, I think, behind Bayode, Quill, and Gwenta. So, unfortunate there to penalty in such a manner. Thomas Gerard does steal fastest lap on those softs. I'm not going to have time to go down this. Although, it's very short, so that's fine. So we are good. So let's jump off the game and take a look, see if our podium finishers want to have some interviews. Yes, yes, yes. No one cares. So Ian says he is jumping in, so that's good to see. Hopefully Luke and Imchez join as well. So Ian, home race, another win. How did that look from your end? And then I'll tell you what kicked off behind you.
Well, the race, I had a shit start. I fell down to P3 from pole, so that was not good. But after that, I knew I may have like the race pace for this race, so I was like, just settle in. Don't use the battery at the start, because I knew people were gonna do so. And that helped me at the beginning. And then at the pit stop phase, I decided to stay out longer to jump the train, which I knew was forming, where Thomas Gerard was in. And I managed that really close, because I was only like 7/10 in front of Quill. And that would have changed the entire race up if I was behind them. And from that point onwards, it was just cruising to the line, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a bit carnage for Quill. You managed to skip the train that Thomas came out right behind, which is really unfortunate for him. Sort of a 5-car train, which did include Quill, but was kind of the guys that had been running towards the back. We were all kind of fighting the whole way, and then Thomas arrived on the back of them, and it's just so difficult to overtake when everyone in front of you has DRS as well, which Thomas found. But yeah, you managed to overcut Quill and the rest of the train, and just never saw anybody for the rest of the race.
Yep.
So probably one of your easiest wins. After just kind of chilling
like
behind
that from the
camera.
beginning. In the beginning, it looked like I had to fight for it, but after Quill made this race easy for me, so I have to thank him for that.
Might have to investigate a bit of cross-team communication there.
No, I was in PC with George only, so
no, I know. I saw. So let's jump on with PT Luke. Getting your championship fight a little bit back on track, only losing the 7 points to Ian after Thomas stole fastest lap. How did that go for you from the train?
Okay, right. Well, let's just start off. Absolutely no one showed respect on track today. That was some of the worst driving. So no one showed respect to me on track, so I didn't show them any. No one left me room, I didn't leave them room. Simple as. People want to be idiots, not leave room on the track, then I'll do it straight back to you. You can't do something, then, you know, just get away with it. I'm going to do that back to you, because if you're not showing me respect on the track, why should I show you it? Is my opinion on what kicked off.
Imagine I might be a little busy then.
Oh yeah, 100%. It was just people purposely trucking each other off the track, people just driving into each other. Quill was defending within their rights mostly, which was fine, but it was just the people behind. Some of the obviously you're gonna have to go for strange moves and stuff like that, but then the fact that someone had come alongside them, or you then be defending a position, they just wouldn't leave room. They just stick you off the track. Like, and I think this is caused by the rule book. I can't lie. It's definitely caused a lot of the incidents here and people being unaware of how it works, and how the racing room works, because the way people were trying to jump in spaces with our racing room, I did it as well, because at that point I just didn't care, because if other people are doing it, why should I be left out of the fun, shall we say, if they want to call it that. But yeah, that was terrible. I'm not finishing on the podium. I know that myself. But yeah,
I thought your move on Quinton early on was a little optimistic.
it wasn't. I locked up.
Fair enough.
That's why, because otherwise I would have been fine on the inside, but I locked up. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just being a little optimistic there in sector 2, which isn't the easiest place to make an overtake. Although I have seen them done. Although it does require quite a compliant driver that you're trying to overtake.
I know Quintin's compliant. It's just I made a slight mistake. But to be P2, I mean, it's not going to be P2, but from the back of the grid. And then yeah, quali was stupid. Some absolute idiots on the racing line. I don't know what they were doing. They're just swerving all over the place. There's like 3 of them, and then I just expect them to move for me, so I just go straight into the back of him, because I'm not moving and compromising my lap.
No,
Simple
you
as.
shouldn't be expected to. So yeah, Studio might be quite busy here today. When I
Oh yeah, 100%.
finally get around to it at some point. I've had quite an easy time with F1 as of late, so I'm not sure how much I'm looking forward to dealing with Quill's monkeys on that one.
By the way, did I not get the fast slap?
No,
Nah,
Thomas got front wing damage, pit for softs, and then between
Always the
about
same
15 spins, stole it.
Always the same story.
Yeah, you had a. Let me just grab the telemetry. You had a 12.6. Thomas did a 12.0.
No, I guess it happens.
So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's still 25 points. It's not the maximum, but we had mostly the same thing last season. There's always going to be somebody quick that has not the best of racers and manages to put some nice shiny tires on at the end. But anyway, I think we'll leave that one there for today. Next week we are at the home of motor racing in Silverstone for a sprint. So it's going to be GRS's second sprint at Silverstone. The first one was quite eventful in F2, definitely. This was back when we only had 2 tiers as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how F3 get on with having to do an additional 9 laps of Silverstone. Hopefully it's not quite as action-packed as some of the races we've had there so far. That will be live 7 PM UK time on Monday. F2 will be live with Luke here as our commentator on Tuesday at 7 PM, and then F3 is going to be F1. Sorry, is going to be another record and upload job, because David's still doing an adult thing and having a job, unfortunately. But I am going to leave that off there today. I've been Zeke. I've been your commentator, and joined here at the end by top 2 in the championship and the race, Ian and Luke. And we will see you all next week.